Alright, how's it going, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the New York Rangers and going over who I believe they should draft with the second overall pick. And they also have the 20th overall, so I guess we'll discuss that too. But to be honest, there's a common theme that, New Jersey's going to get Hughes and New York is going to get Kakko. Now that is not necessarily the case. It could definitely go the other way around where, Kakko is going to New Jersey and the Rangers are going to get Hughes. But anyways, with that being said, we're going to take a look at their depth charts, go over their current roster, and kind of analyze maybe who they need more between a winger in Kakko and the centerman in Hughes. And then with that being said, we'll take that information and kind of see who they should draft at the 20 spot. Let's just get right into it. So on center, we have Mika Zibanejad, Ryan Strome, Chytil, Howden, Anderson, and some other prospects. On left wing, we have Kreider, Vesey, Nemestikov, Lemieux, Bolesky, and some other prospects. On right wing, we have Bucevic, Fast, Lettieri, Tyroning, and Kravtsov, and some other prospects. On defense, we have Shattenkirk, Brady Shea, D'Angelo, Poink, Smith, Mark Stahl, Libor Hajek, Adam Fox, Keandre Miller, and some other prospects. Alright guys, and to be honest, what do I think? Well, based on my first impressions with looking at this roster, well, to be honest, on the center depth, obviously we have Mika Zibanejad, who's that proven 1-2 punch guy. I think he's probably better off on the second line, but he can definitely be a fringe first liner for the New York Rangers until they have a guy who develops into that number one guy. We have Ryan Strome, who, actually had a really decent bounce back season with the Rangers at the tail end after being shipped out by Edmonton, where he had 33 points in 63 games. So he's looking like, so hopefully if he can maintain that, he'll be that fringe second, third line guy. And then we have some other guys like Chytil, Howden, Anderson, and some prospects. And so what do I think when I see this roster? Well, to be honest, there is a potential for there to be a lot of upside. Obviously, the main guys being Chytil, Howden, and Anderson. If they were to pan out and, fill out that center depth role, New York Rangers center depth would be looking pretty decent going into the future. However, it is never good to rely on a very young center depth. It's never good to rely on a young goalie. It's never good to rely on a young defensive core. And because of that, I honestly think the Rangers would very much benefit from drafting a Hughes to help build out their center core. Because right now, as it stands, we have Zibanejad being that, bona fide 1-2 punch guy. And that is it. So very shallow, and obviously we're depending on guys like Howden and Anderson who may not be able to take on that role for 2-3 years, if not at all. However, if they do pan out, whereas Chytil, Howden, and Anderson, they maintain those 2-3-1 spot, they would have a decent offensive core. However, I wouldn't put a lot of confidence in the center core for right now. On left wing, we have Chris Kreider, who's definitely that really solid 1-2 punch guy again, power forward, goal scorer. And then we have Jimmy Vesey, who honestly, he hasn't been living up to the hype. He signed as an NCAA agent, and he's been playing decent. I'll put up his specs, but he's been playing decent, but he definitely isn't becoming that, power forward, second line, first line player that he was projected to be when he was signed. And then we have Nemestikov. So Nemestikov, if you guys have watched my channel, I have an opinion on Nemestikov. Not that he's a horrible player by any means, but when he played on Tampa Bay, he had supporting pieces like Kucherov and Stamkos on his wing, and because of that, his points were inflated. And as soon as he got shipped off to, New York, his point totals had a very big drop-off, and because of that, I see him more as a third-line scorer. Other than that, obviously, we have Brendan Lemieux, Matt Bolesky, Gettinger, some other prospects, and just bottom six guys. So when looking at the left wing, obviously we have Kreider and Vesey. I see them as 2-3 guys, so having a number one left wing would be huge. So that's where potentially Kakko can fill in that left-right wing spot. On right wing, we have Bucevic, Fast, Lettieri, Kravtsov, and some other prospects. So to be honest, when looking at the right wing, it's not a lot better. So obviously we have Pavel, and he's actually a decent right winger. I do believe he actually may have first line upside, but for now I see him as a solid second liner. We have Jesper Fast, who's definitely more of that third line scorer, and then some other guys, including Vitaly Kravtsov, who had a decent year in the KHL and maybe looking like he can be a solid, second line, if not first line right wing. However, he may not be entering the NHL next year, but maybe the year after that. On defense, we actually have a lot of pieces here. So to be honest, I believe New York really needs to focus on building out their forward core, because obviously on defense we have Shattenkirk, who is a bona fide 1-2 guy, Brady Shea, who has a lot of upside. He's looking like he could be potentially, the number one guy for New York for the future. D'Angelo, a pretty controversial guy, but he's looking like he can be that more offensive, power play quarterback. Then we have Mark Stahl, who's obviously that, veteran presence. And we also have some really good guys in the pipeline like Libor Hajek, Adam Fox, Niels Lundqvist, and Keandre Miller. So to be honest here, we have a really good mix of veterans, and prospects in the pipeline. And honestly, adding another top, defensive prospect to this mix would be great. But as it stands right now, I think they have a pretty good defensive core going into the future. In net, we have Henrik Lundqvist, Georgiev, Tokarski, and some other, prospect AHL goaltenders. So obviously Lundqvist, he's getting way up there in age, but he is still the king in my heart. And I don't know how many really good years he has, maybe 1, maybe 2. I know he doesn't want to leave New York, so New York's going to be having him in that role, which is okay, because he's that veteran guy who can really lead and mentor, your young goaltending core. And then obviously we have Georgiev, who is looking like he could be the potential starting goaltender for the New York Rangers, who had a really good, stint in the NHL last year. But other than that, we do have some other prospects, but no one I would consider, blue chip prospects that are looking like they're going to be a number one goaltender. All right, and so what do I think about the New York Rangers core? Well, to be honest, I think they're really lacking some, forward depth here. They have some big holes in their game. But honestly, when looking at their prospects and looking at who they have in their pipeline, even though their center depth looks pretty weak because they have a lot of, younger talent that they're relying on, which isn't a great scenario, I actually think they have bigger holes in their winger support. And honestly, in the scenario that they're in, they really cannot go wrong with drafting either Kakko or Hughes. Hughes could really bolster their center core going into the future, whereas Kakko is more that solidified, winger support guy that will, lead their winger core going into the future. As it stands, perhaps Elias Anderson, Brett Howden turn into those 1-2 punch guys. Then Zibanejad is obviously still there, and we have Ryan Strome and Chittle. And so I'd actually be pretty confident in the center core. However, they don't have the core pieces that they can rely on. Obviously, we have some veterans like Chris Kreider, VC, and some other prospects. But, honestly, no one here I would run home about. Kraftstov is looking very intriguing, but they really lack winger depth. So with that being said, I actually think they'd benefit more from drafting a Kakko. As for the 20th overall pick, it's going to be kind of hard to make a selection at this point because, the draft board could just go anywhere, but I do have a couple guys in mind that would help fill in their gaps in their forward depth. The first guy is Ryan Suzuki. I don't know if he's going to be available at 20, but he's definitely a good, solid, center prospect that if they were able to pick up at 20 would be huge. Another is Raphael Lavoie. So Raphael Lavoie is a 6'4" power forward goal scoring, playmaking winger who definitely has a lot of upside and is very intriguing with his size, skating ability, and two-way game. Another guy is Niels Höglander. So Niels Höglander is also a very interesting pick. He has a lot of offensive upside, but he does lack in size. But he has a lot of grit, very, very good skating ability, and looks like he could potentially be a top 6 forward. So those are the 3 guys that come to mind for the number 20 spot. If anyone, I'd actually recommend Niels Höglander. I think he really fits the role of the New York Rangers, and it fits the identity that they're trying to create. But anyways, guys, that's my interpretation and verdict on the New York Rangers and who they should draft. Definitely let me know down below who you think. Or maybe let me know who you think they should draft between Hughes and Kakko. Maybe who fits the New York Rangers more, and who should they pick up at 20? Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. See you guys later.